got married, but not happy. The wedding lights were still hanging outside the house when I realized I had made the biggest mistake of my life. They shimmered in the cold night air, blinking in soft golden patterns, as if celebrating something that no longer existed. Guests had gone home. The music had faded. The laughter that once filled the courtyard was now nothing but an echo trapped between decorated walls. And I was sitting alone on the edge of the bed that was supposed to be ours. My red bridal dress felt heavier than it had a few hours ago. The jewelry that once made me feel beautiful now felt like chains. I looked at myself in the mirror. The girl staring back at me had tired eyes, smudged mascara, and a smile that had already learned how to pretend. Outside the room, I could hear his voice. Arham. My husband. The word felt strange inside my chest. He was laughing with his cousins, carefree, light-hearted, as if tonight was just another celebration. As if he hadn't just promised to spend a lifetime with someone he barely knew. With someone he never truly wanted. I remember how this marriage happened. It was quick. Too quick. Families met. Horoscopes matched. He's from a good family. He earns well. You'll be happy. They said it with so much certainty. As if happiness was something that could be signed into a contract. I tried to convince myself. Maybe love grows later. Maybe comfort becomes affection. Maybe silence turns into understanding. But deep inside, there was always a quiet voice whispering, "This isn't right." The door opened. Aram walked in, loosening his sherwani collar. He looked at me briefly, then away. "You should rest," he said casually, like we were strangers sharing a waiting room. "It's been a long day. A long day." That's what he called the day our lives were tied together. I nodded. My throat felt tight. I wanted him to sit beside me. I wanted him to look at me and say something real. Something warm. Something that made this feel less empty. Instead, he walked to the balcony, checking his phone. I could see the faint light from the screen reflecting on his face. His expression softened in a way it hadn't when he looked at me. A message. From her. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. Hania. The girl he loved before me. The girl he wasn't allowed to marry. The girl whose name no one dared to mention after our engagement was announced. But love doesn't disappear just because elders decide it should. I stood slowly, my heavy dress brushing against the floor, and walked toward him. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. He locked his phone instantly. "Yeah. Just work stuff." Work doesn't make someone smile like that. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream. To ask why he agreed to this marriage, if his heart belonged to someone else. But instead, I said nothing. Because I knew the answer. He didn't choose this. Neither did I. Two obedient children fulfilling family expectations. Two sacrifices wrapped in expensive fabric. That night, we slept on the same bed but miles apart. There was a space between us that felt wider than an ocean. I could hear his breathing. Slow. Steady. peaceful. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. This is marriage, I told myself. Maybe tomorrow will feel different. But tomorrow felt the same. Days turned into weeks. We learned how to live around each other. Not with each other. We spoke politely. Shared meals quietly. Attended family dinners, smiling perfectly for everyone else. Such a beautiful couple, people would say. I wanted to ask them what beauty they saw. Was it in the silence at breakfast? In the way he avoided my eyes? In the way I pretended not to notice when he stepped outside to take calls late at night? One evening, I gathered the courage. Are you happy? I asked him while we sat in the living room. The television playing something. Neither of us was watching. He didn't answer immediately. After a few seconds, he said, "Happiness isn't everything." I felt my heart crack slightly. That's not what I asked. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. We're trying. That should be enough. Trying. Trying to what? To survive. To impress our parents. To bury feelings that refuse to die. I don't want to be just trying, I whispered. I want to feel chosen. He finally looked at me then. And for a brief second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, but not love. I never wanted to hurt you, he said quietly. That sentence confirmed everything. He never wanted to hurt me, but he also never wanted me. I smiled, because crying in front of him would make me weak. It's okay, I lied. That night, I opened his drawer while he was showering. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof? Maybe pain. I found a small box. Inside it was a photograph. Arham and Hania, laughing. Close, alive. On the back of the photo, in delicate handwriting, were the words, "No matter what happens, you are mine." My hand started shaking. No matter what happens. Even if he marries someone else. Even if that someone else is me. The bathroom door opened. I quickly placed the box back and sat on the bed, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. When he came out, our eyes met. And in that silent moment, I realized something terrifying. I was not fighting another woman. I was fighting a memory. And memories don't get tired. They don't argue. They don't fade easily. Weeks later, his mother asked me, "When will we hear good news?" Good news. A child. As if bringing another life into this fragile marriage would fix the cracks. I forced a smile. Inshallah soon. But inside, I wondered what kind of home we would offer a child. A home where love was a ghost. A home where two people shared a surname, but not a heartbeat. One night, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "I miss you too," he said. The words pierced through my chest like glass. I stood frozen behind the wall, my fingers digging into my palms. There it was. The truth. Raw. Undeniable. I walked back to our room quietly and sat on the floor. For the first time since the wedding, I allowed myself to cry without holding back. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent tears that soaked into the edge of my dupatta. I wasn't angry at him. I wasn't even angry at her. I was angry at myself. For hoping. For believing that maybe one day he would wake up and see me. Choose me. Love me. But love isn't born from duty. It grows from desire. And I was never his desire. As I wiped my tears, I looked at my reflection again. The same girl from the wedding night. But something inside her had changed. She wasn't confused anymore. She understood the truth. I got married. But I was not loved. And somewhere deep inside my breaking heart, a dangerous question began to form. If he still belongs to her, then what do I belong to? The question followed me everywhere after that night. It echoed in the kitchen while I stirred tea for his parents. It whispered in my ears when relatives called me the lucky bride. It haunted me when I lay beside him, staring at the dark ceiling while he slept peacefully, as if his heart wasn't divided between two worlds. I began noticing things I had ignored before. The way he never reached for my hand first. The way his smiles were polite, measured, careful. The way he would sometimes type a message and then quickly erase it when I entered the room. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was aware. And awareness is painful. One afternoon, while folding his clothes, I found his phone on the bed. It buzzed once. Then again. I stared at it for a long moment. I had never checked his phone before. I had told myself that trust was important. That dignity was important. But what dignity was left when your marriage felt like a rented space in someone else's heart? The screen lit up. Hania. My breath caught. The message preview showed only 3 words. I can't anymore. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. Those 3 words were enough to send a storm through my chest. I can't anymore. Was she tired of waiting? Was she asking him to choose? Or was she finally walking away? The front door opened. I quickly placed the phone back and stepped away just as he entered the room. He looked at me, then at the phone. It buzzed again. This time he picked it up instantly. His eyes scanned the screen, and I watched his expression shift. First tension, then panic. I need to go out, he said abruptly. Now? I asked quietly. Yes, it's urgent. Urgent, I nodded. Of course it was urgent. He left without explaining further. The door closed, and I stood there in the middle of our bedroom, feeling like an outsider in my own life. Hours passed. Maghrib came and went. His mother asked where he was. I lied for him. Work emergency. I had become skilled at protecting a marriage that wasn't protecting me. He returned late that night. His face looked pale, disturbed. Is everything okay? I asked, even though my voice felt distant from my own body. He hesitated. Then he said, She's getting engaged. The words landed heavily between us. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Engaged. So that was it. She called me to tell me. He continued, his voice strained. Her family forced her. Just like... He stopped mid-sentence. Just like you. Just like us. He ran a hand through his hair. She sounded broken. What about me? I wanted to scream. What do I sound like? Instead, I asked softly. And how did it make you feel? He looked at me as if the question surprised him. I don't know, he said honestly. It feels like something is ending. Something is ending. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. Maybe that's a good thing? I whispered. He didn't respond. That night, he didn't sleep immediately. He lay on his back, staring into nothingness. I could sense the war inside him. Grief mixed with guilt. For the first time, I felt something strange. Not jealousy. Not anger. Relief. Maybe now, I thought, maybe now he will finally let her go. Maybe now there will be space for me. Days passed after her engagement news. He became quieter, less distracted. He stopped stepping outside to take late, night calls. He started coming home on time. Once, while I was setting the table, he stood beside me and said, "You don't have to do everything alone." It was such a small sentence, but it felt enormous. I looked at him carefully. "Then help me," I replied gently, and he did. That evening, we cooked together for the first time. There were no grand confessions, no dramatic apologies. Just small, ordinary moments. The kind that build something slowly. I caught him watching me once while I laughed at something silly. There was no guilt in his eyes this time. Just curiosity. As if he was seeing me for the first time. Weeks later, his mother brought up the topic again. "Know that you two have settled. We should think about a baby." I felt my chest tighten. I wasn't ready. Not yet. That night, I gathered my courage. "I don't want to have a child until we are truly okay," I told him. He didn't get defensive. He didn't dismiss my fear. Instead, he asked quietly, "Are we not okay?" I met his gaze. "We are trying," I said carefully. "But trying isn't the same as healing." He was silent for a long moment. "I never gave you a real chance, did I?" He finally admitted. The honesty in his voice made my eyes sting. "No," I whispered. He nodded slowly, as if accepting a difficult truth. "I was selfish. I thought marrying you would erase everything. But I didn't realize I was dragging you into my unfinished story." My heart ached hearing that. "I don't want to be your replacement," I said. "I want to be your choice." He looked at me then in a way he never had before. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but with awareness. "I don't know how to fix this," he confessed. "Neither do I," I replied. "But we can start by being honest." So we talked, for hours, about her. About the pressure from his parents. About the resentment he carried. About the loneliness I felt every single day in this house. There were tears. There were long silences. But there were no lies. When we finally lay down to sleep, the space between us felt smaller. Not gone, but smaller. In the darkness, he said something that made my heart tremble. "I don't miss her the way I used to." I didn't respond immediately. "Why?" I asked eventually. "Because I'm starting to see you." The words were fragile, careful, uncertain, but they were real. For the first time since our wedding, hope didn't feel foolish. It felt possible. However, hope is delicate. And just when I began to believe that maybe our story could change, fate decided to test us. 2 weeks later, while organizing old documents, I found something that made my blood run cold. A flight ticket. His name on it. Departure date 3 days from now. Destination Istanbul. And the booking date. The same night Hania got engaged. My heart began pounding loudly in my ears. Was he planning to see her one last time? Was this closure? Or was this goodbye to me? I sat on the edge of the bed, the ticket shaking in my hands. Just when I thought we were finally moving forward. Why was he planning to leave? The ticket felt like betrayal pressed into paper. I stared at the departure date again, hoping I had misunderstood. 3 days. Just 3 days away. My chest tightened with every breath. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. We had talked. We had been honest. He had said he was starting to see me. Was that all just guilt speaking? Or worse, was I the one who misunderstood everything again? When he came home that evening, I was still sitting on the bed, the ticket placed neatly on the nightstand, between us like evidence in a trial. He noticed it immediately. His steps slowed. "You went through my things?" he asked quietly. There was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion. "I wasn't searching," I replied, my throat dry. "I found it." Silence stretched between us. "Are you going to see her?" I finally asked. The question tasted bitter. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, then sat down across from me. "I bought it that night," he admitted. The honesty stung more than a lie would have. "Why?" He exhaled slowly. "Because I panicked. I waited. She was getting engaged. It felt final. I thought, maybe I needed to see her once. To end it properly. To say goodbye." A tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "And what about me?" I whispered. Was I just supposed to wait here while you closed chapters with someone else? He looked at me then, really looked at me. "I didn't think that far," he said, shame flickering across his face. I wasn't thinking about anyone. I was thinking about my own confusion. I let out a hollow laugh. "You're married, Aram. You don't get to think like a single man anymore." The words hung heavy in the air. "I know," he said softly. "That's why I haven't told you?" "That's not something to be proud of." He nodded. "I didn't go," he said. The statement caught me off guard. "What?" "I haven't canceled it yet. But I didn't go. I've been staring at that ticket for days." I searched his face for deception. "Why didn't you go?" His answer came slowly, carefully. "Because every time I thought about leaving, I saw your face." My heart skipped painfully. "I realized something," he continued. "If I go there, I'm choosing a past that already chose to move on. But if I stay, maybe I can choose a future. A future. With me? Are you choosing me? I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound steady. He didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation terrified me. I want to, he finally said. Want. Not, I am. Not I do. Adjust, I want to. I stood up abruptly and walked toward the window. The evening sky was fading into dark blue, just like the night of our wedding. It felt like a cruel circle. I don't want to be your second option, I said quietly. I don't want to win because she's unavailable. You're not. Then what am I? I turned to face him. Because some days I feel like a placeholder, like a responsibility, like a compromise. His jaw tightened. You're my wife. That's a title. I shot back. Not a feeling. The room went silent again. He stood up and walked closer, but not too close. I don't love her the way I used to, he said firmly this time. But I won't lie and say, I forgot everything overnight. That would be unfair to you. His honesty was both a knife and a bomb. I don't expect you to forget, I said. I just need to know I'm not sharing you. He ran his hands over his face, frustration mixing with vulnerability. I don't know how to switch off years of emotion, he confessed. But I know that when I imagine you leaving, it scares me. The words made my breath hitch. Why? Because you've been patient with me in ways I don't deserve? He said. Because when she called crying, you were the one serving dinner to my parents. Because when I was grieving something lost, you were grieving something you never even had. That broke me. A tear finally escaped. I never wanted to compete, I whispered. I just wanted to be loved. He stepped closer now, carefully, as if approaching something fragile. I don't want to go to Istanbul, he said. I think I kept the ticket because part of me was afraid to fully let go. Afraid that if I closed that door, I'd have nothing left. And now? I asked. Now I know that's not true. My heart pounded. Then cancel it, I said. He didn't hesitate this time. He picked up his phone, opened the airline app, and right there in front of me, canceled the flight. The confirmation email arrived seconds later. He showed me the screen. It was such a small action, but it felt monumental. Something inside me loosened for the first time. He put the phone down. I can't promise you dramatic love, he said quietly. I can't promise you fairy tales, but I can promise that I will stop looking backward. I stepped closer, closing the distance that had existed between us for months. I don't need fairy tales, I replied. I just need honesty. An effort. He nodded. I can give you that. That night, we didn't magically transform into a perfect couple. But for the first time, when we lay in bed, he turned toward me. Not out of obligation, not by accident, intentionally. His hand hovered awkwardly before resting gently over mine. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't intense. It was tentative. But it was real. Weeks passed, and something subtle began to shift between us. We started sharing stories from our childhoods. We started arguing about small things and resolving them without silence. He began texting me during the day. Simple messages. Did you eat? Drive safe. He sent, I miss you. I stared at that message for a long time before replying. Because for the first time, I believed it. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch, he said something unexpected. Her engagement broke off. My body went still. What? He nodded. The guy found out she still had feelings for someone else. A heavy silence followed. And how does that make you feel? I asked carefully. He didn't look conflicted this time. It makes me sad for her, he said. But it doesn't change my decision. My heart pounded loudly. And what is your decision? He looked at me steadily. To stay. The word wrapped around my fragile hope like a shield. But fate, cruel and unpredictable, wasn't done testing us. 2 days later, his phone rang while we were having dinner. He glanced at the screen. His expression shifted. It was her. He looked at me. And for the first time, instead of stepping outside, he answered the call in front of me. My heart began pounding so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. He put the phone on speaker. Hello. His voice was steady, calm, different from the softness he once reserved only for her. There was silence for a second. Then her voice. Shaky, familiar. Arham, I didn't know who else to call. I felt my fingers curl into my palm under the table. I forced myself not to look away. I heard about the engagement, he said gently. A small broken laugh escaped from her end. Everyone heard. The sadness in her tone was undeniable. She sounded tired, defeated. I thought he would understand, she whispered. But he said, I was still in love with someone else. Ariam didn't respond immediately. I watched his face carefully. I was searching for something. Longing, regret, temptation. But what I saw instead was heaviness. Not desire. Not hope. Just responsibility. Henia, he said slowly. Maybe he wasn't wrong. The words hit the room like thunder. There was complete silence on the line. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm saying we held on to something that was already over, he replied. And in doing that, we hurt other people, including ourselves. My breath caught. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't hiding. He was choosing his words carefully, and he was choosing them in front of me. I thought you'd come, she said quietly. You booked a ticket. My stomach twisted. He glanced at me for a brief second before answering. I canceled it. Her breathing became uneven. So that's it? She asked. You're just done. Aram's voice softened, but it didn't waver. I'm married, he said. And I didn't respect that the way I should have it first. But I won't keep making the same mistake. There it was. A line drawn clearly. I felt something inside my chest crack. but not in pain. In release. You loved me, she whispered. I did, he admitted. But love isn't enough when it keeps destroying everything around it. A tear rolled down my cheek silently. He continued, you deserve someone who can choose you without hesitation. And I deserve to stop living between past and present. The call ended quietly. No dramatic goodbye. No crying. Just the sound of a chapter closing. The room felt different after that. Lighter. He put the phone down slowly. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked, are you okay? He nodded, but his eyes were glossy. It hurts, he admitted. But it's the kind of hurt that heals. I didn't know what to say to that. So I did something I had never done before. I reached for his hand first. He looked down at our fingers intertwined, as if surprised by the simple act. You didn't have to stay for that call, he said quietly. I wanted to, I replied. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt included in his truth. That night, something shifted deeply between us. Not because he rejected her, but because he chose transparency. Days passed. Then weeks. There were no more hidden calls. No more mysterious messages. He began leaving his phone anywhere in the house without thinking. Not as proof. Just naturally. Trust, I realized, doesn't return in a dramatic moment. It rebuilds in quiet consistency. One evening, as we were walking on the terrace, he stopped suddenly. I've been unfair to you, he said. I turned toward him. I married you with half a heart. He continued. And you stayed anyway. His honesty still startled me every time. I stayed because I believed you weren't a bad person, I said softly. Just confused. He gave a faint smile. I'm not confused anymore. The air felt still around us. What are you now? I asked. He stepped closer. Certain. My heart began racing again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something warmer. About what? I whispered. About wanting to build something real with you. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Not because she's gone, he added quickly. Not because there's no one else, but because I see you now. And I like who you are. I respect you. I feel calm with you. Calm. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. And honesty had become more valuable to me than grand declarations. I don't want to rush you, he said, carefully. But I want to start over. Properly? Start over, I asked. As if we're choosing each other for the first time. A tears blurred my vision. You're sure? I asked, one last time. He didn't hesitate. Yes. For the first time since our wedding, he pulled me into an embrace that didn't feel forced. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't fueled by guilt. It was steady, grounded. I rested my forehead against his chest and allowed myself to breathe. Maybe this is what healing feels like, I thought. Not fireworks. Not obsession. Just safety. Months passed, and our home slowly began to feel warmer. We laughed more. We fought and made up. We started planning small trips together. He asked for my opinion before making decisions. He introduced me proudly as my wife. And this time, it didn't sound like a duty. One night, as we lay in bed, he traced circles on my hand absent-mindedly. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said softly. The words made my heart stop. Falling, not forcing. Not pretending. Falling. Slowly, he added. I smiled through tears. "Slowly is okay," I replied, "because slow love lasts. But life has a strange way of testing happiness. The moment you begin to trust it." 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the test in disbelief. My hands shook. Not from fear this time, but from overwhelming emotion. When I told him, he froze. For a brief, terrifying second, I saw uncertainty flash across his face. And my heart dropped. Was it too soon? Was he not ready? But then his expression changed. His eyes filled. And he laughed. A real, unguarded laugh. "We're going to be parents," he whispered. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. He pulled me into his arms tightly. "I won't let you feel alone," he promised into my hair. I wanted to believe him completely. And I did. But as I rested that night with my hand over my stomach, a faint fear lingered deep inside me. Because happiness had felt fragile before. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to survive losing it again. A week later, during our first hospital visit, the doctor's expression changed while looking at the ultrasound. The room grew too quiet. And suddenly, I felt that familiar cold fear creeping back into my bones. The doctor adjusted the screen, her brows slightly furrowed. "Is everything okay?" Aram asked quickly, his hand tightening around mine. The silence in that small white room felt louder than any scream. "There's a complication," the doctor said carefully. "The heartbeat is faint, weaker than expected for this stage." My world stopped. I stared at the blurry image on the screen, trying to understand how something so tiny could already feel like my entire universe. "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means we need to monitor closely," she replied gently. "It could stabilize. Or..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "Or we could lose it." The drive home was silent. Aram kept one hand on the steering wheel, and the other wrapped tightly around mine. Neither of us spoke, as if saying it out loud would make it real. When we reached home, I walked straight to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The same bed where months ago I had questioned my place in his life. Now I was questioning something else entirely. Why does happiness feel borrowed? Aram knelt in front of me. "Look at me," he said softly. I lifted my eyes. "We're not losing anything," he said firmly, as if convincing both of us. Not yet. I wanted his certainty. I wanted to borrow it and wrap myself in it like armor. But fear doesn't listen to logic. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept my palm pressed gently against my stomach, whispering silent prayers into the darkness. Please stay. Please don't leave me too. In the early hours of morning, I felt a sharp pain. At first, I told myself it was normal. But then it came again. Stronger. I sat up slowly. Aram, I whispered. He woke instantly. There's pain, I said, my voice trembling. Within minutes, we were rushing to the hospital. The ride felt endless. Every bump in the road sent waves of fear through me. I stared out the window, tears silently sliding down my cheeks. I had just started imagining a nursery. Tiny clothes, little fingers wrapped around mine. Was it already slipping away? At the hospital, everything moved too fast and too slow at the same time. Nurses, bright lights, cold hands. Aram wasn't allowed in immediately. I saw his face once before they took me inside. Pale, terrified, and suddenly, I wasn't thinking about myself anymore. I was thinking about him. About how far we had come. About how he had chosen to stay. About how he had slowly, carefully fallen in love with me. I couldn't let this break us. Not now. The pain intensified. And then, it stopped. Not because it eased, but because everything inside me felt empty. The doctor's expression told me before her words did. I'm so sorry. Two words. Two words that shattered everything. The ride home that day felt heavier than the one after our wedding. But this time, the silence between us was different. It wasn't distant. It wasn't cold. It was shared grief. When we entered the bedroom, I broke. I collapsed into tears I didn't know my body could hold. I did something wrong, I cried. I should have been more careful. I should have. Aram pulled me into his arms tightly. Stop, he said, his voice breaking. This isn't your fault. But my body? Your body tried, he interrupted gently. You tried. I felt his tears against my hair. Arham was crying. Not quietly, not hiding it, openly. For us. For our baby. For the future we had started to believe in. I'm so sorry, he whispered over and over, as if apologizing to someone we would never meet. Days blurred together after that. The house felt too quiet. The empty space in my womb felt louder than anything. But through it all, he didn't leave my side. He made tea when I couldn't get out of bed. He answered relatives' questions, so I wouldn't have to. He sat beside me during long silences, without trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. One evening, as I stared blankly at the wall, I asked him something that had been haunting me. Do you regret choosing me? The question hung fragile in the air. He didn't answer immediately. He stood up, walked toward me, and knelt down just like he had that day after the ultrasound. Look at me, he said again. I did. I regret not choosing you sooner, he replied. My chest tightened. This pain, he continued softly, it would hurt no matter what. But I'm grateful I'm going through it with you. The tears slipped down my face again. I thought losing the baby would break us. I admitted. It didn't, he said firmly. It showed me how much you matter. He rested his forehead against mine. I love you, he whispered. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, no shadow of the past. Just love, slowly built, earned through honesty, pain, and choice. I closed my eyes and let the words sink into me. For the first time since our wedding night, I didn't feel like a compromise. I felt wanted. Months later, the grief softened. It didn't disappear. It never would. But it transformed into something quieter. Something we carried together. One night, as we sat on the terrace watching the sky turn orange, Arham intertwined his fingers with mine. Do you remember what you asked me once? He said. What? You asked if I was happy. I smiled faintly. You said happiness isn't everything. He nodded. I was wrong. The wind brushed softly against us. I'm happy, he said simply. Not because life is perfect, not because nothing hurts, but because I chose right. I looked at him carefully. And did you? I teased gently. He squeezed my hand. Yes, he said without hesitation. I chose you. The lights outside our house shimmered again that evening. Not from a wedding this time, but from a small family gathering. Laughter echoed. Warmth filled the rooms. And as I stood beside my husband, I realized something quietly powerful. I had gotten married. And at first, I wasn't happy. But love isn't always found on the wedding night. Sometimes it grows in the ruins of misunderstandings. Sometimes it's built from broken beginnings. Sometimes it arrives slowly, after tears, after loss, after choice. And this time, it stayed.